Okay, it's already 6:01, so we'll start. Cool. So, hello, good evening, everyone. Firstly, welcome back to your own channel, Scholars, and I hope everybody is doing well and had a good day, right? So, cool. So, a couple of y'all are already here. Okay, Sujal's here. Hi, Sujal. Good evening. Trisha. Hi, Trisha. Cool. So we'll just give it a couple of seconds for other people to join as well, right? But in the meanwhile, we can quickly do the introductions part. Anyway, so I'll just randomly go through the first couple of slides. So my name is Nikitha, and I'm the history educator here at Unacademy Scholars channel, and I take classes for standard 11th and 12th, of course teaching them history, and especially CBSE syllabus, right? And a little bit about my educational qualifications. I have recently graduated from Ashoka University with a bachelor's degree in history and a minor in political science.
Okay, added to reminders.
Sorry for that. Okay, so also about the Telegram Scholars channel update, if you haven't joined already, you can go click on the link in the description below of this video and join this Telegram Scholars channel. So it's basically like a complimentary thing to your YouTube channel, right? You will get updates and information as to what is happening on the YouTube channel of Scholars. So that way, if there are any cancellation of classes, postponing of classes, or any quizzes or updates, they'll be available on the Telegram channel. So I highly request you all to go join it. And as far as 11th standard students are concerned, there's a special Unacademy combat scholarship test going on. So basically, the questionnaire is in the form of 30 questions, and 45 minutes are given to you all to answer them, right? And the advantage is that these tests are both available in Hindi and English, so you can choose whichever language is feasible for you. And also, the huge add-on is you can actually win scholarships from an academy worth 1 crore rupees, right? So that way, it's kind of an incentive for you all to go enroll yourself in the test, for which the link is in the description below. Again, go check it out. Yeah, so as far as the Unacademy Plus features are concerned, there's actually a lot of features, right? Starting with you can actually sit at your own houses, like own homes, and listen to some of the top classes taught by top educators of India, which are all available on a single platform, and there's unlimited access to all of those courses. And there are regular doubt clearing sessions, answer writing sessions. Along with that, you can also take part in practice tests and live test series. There's exhaustive coverage of syllabus by the educators on Unacademy Plus platform. There's mentorship given to you, there's guidance given to you, along with access to study materials, right, in the form of PDFs, which you can later refer to for any queries or doubts. These will especially be helpful during the times of examination, right? Like it'll help you as some kind of revision. So yeah, as far as the pricing is concerned for Unacademy Plus, there are 6 range of subscriptions wherein the tenures are different, right? The first is a 3-month one, the next is a 9-month subscription, then there's 12, 15, 18 and 24, for which the prices are listed here, right? Have a quick look at them and go subscribe to whichever one you feel you want, right? But a little hack here is the longer period of time you actually take a subscription for, like a longer duration, the more beneficial it's going to be, right? Quickly moving on to Iconic. Here the features are better and greater than when compared to Unacademy Plus, as in you'll be given personal mentorship, there are live doubt solving sessions, There are weekly reports provided to you which will assess your performance over the last week. So it will tell you basically where you stand and which areas to improve on. Along with that, there is a direct parent connect and also study planners. And as far as the subscription is concerned, again for the iconic pricing, the durations are the same, just like Unacademy Plus, but the pricing might vary a little bit, right? The prices are a little bit hiked here for iconic because of the special features. And yeah, you can have a look at them. They are up on the screen, and go ahead with whichever one you want. And lastly, before going into the actual content for today, I just want to inform you that there are some sort of special classes which are available to the Unacademy users, and most importantly, this is free content, right? But the way you can actually access these classes are you need to download the Unacademy Learning app from the Google Play Store on your mobile, and then log into the app obviously with proper credentials, and then click on your goal, right? Like your 11th standard is your goal, and then select the menu button on the top left corner, and then select an option called special. It'll ask you for a code. You can use my code, which is TUM10, and then you will have access to the content, right? So the classes there are more organized and systemized, so that will give you even a better view of what's happening. So yeah, so that was the introduction. Cool. Before starting, Sujal has something to say. We only have till Abbasid Revolution for term 1. Really? Oh wow. Okay, that was like a update given by CBSE. Is it that official update, Sujal? Because I haven't come across it. I'll have to check the website yet. Okay, Trisha. No. Okay, then what are you talking about? Oh, in your school. Okay, cool. Okay. Trisha says in her school the whole chapter is coming. I mean, it's kind of good because it'll act as like a practice test for your actual board examinations, right? Which are going to be in November/December, right? So it's just going to be like a revision. Don't be scared, guys, because at the end of the term, you have to read the whole chapter anyways. So that'll be like a quick revision type. So don't worry. Trisha, in order to answer your question as to how many sessions this chapter will take, I'm being very honest here. This chapter is relatively a bigger chapter when compared to the other ones in your textbook. So it might take longer than the usual time we take to complete a chapter. So probably 5-6 sessions for sure. Definitely not below that, right? Cool. Yuvraj joined us. Good evening, Yuvraj. Cool. Okay, I answered Trisha's sessions question. Chalo then, it's already 6:10. We will quickly start, right? So we did chapter 2, and then on the audience demand, we've skipped chapter 3 and directly had a quiz on that. Now we are into chapter 4, and we will discuss this. This is in very much detail because this is a very important chapter which has a lot of content and data which you need to remember for sure, right? I'll keep telling which parts are important as we go ahead in the chapter, right? Okay, so it's basically titled as the Central Islamic Lands, right? As the title suggests us, we are majorly going to deal with one particular religion, which is Islam, and how did it spread, in which parts of the world was it practiced, what are the traditions, how did people live their Islamic life, religious institutions, like everything related to Islam, we will cover in bits and pieces in this chapter, right? Right, Trisha, got your point. I was thinking on the same lines actually. I will tell y'all whichever parts are important, right? Cool. Okay, so just to give you like today mostly is going to be introduction to the chapter, right? Like a broader view which will lay out some concepts for us, right? And as we go deeper into the chapter from tomorrow or like by the end of this class, these concepts will be much clearer, right? So it's just going to be like an introductory segment into the class for today. So just to start off, we look at the 21st century now, like the world we are living in right now. If you see, there are over 1 billion Muslims. That is a lot, guys. Like 1 billion out of the whole world population is a lot, especially when there are so many religions existing in the world, right? So there are 1 billion Muslims living in all parts of the world, right? Initially, they only lived in certain areas, right? Gulf region, Arabic region, or Central Asia, or like West Asia. But now they are not just restricted to these parts, but they are spread throughout the world, right? So that is the scenario in the 21st century. Honestly, now they belong to different nations, right? Because they are spread over different countries in the world. US, Mexico, some parts of Africa, Europe, Asia, irrespective of the continent and country, Muslims are there everywhere, and therefore their nationality also changes, right? They'll have different nationalities depending on which country they're living, and also speak different languages. We usually have this misconception that they have to speak in Arabic or they have to speak in Urdu, like stuff like that. But like every Muslim will not know Urdu, or every Muslim might not be aware to speak Arabic or Turkish, right? Some might speak only English, some might speak Mandarin, whatever, like depending on which geographical place they are living, they speak different languages and also dress differently, right? A person who doesn't necessarily wear a burqa, like a woman, if she doesn't wear a burqa, you just can't not address her as a Muslim, right? Like she might be a Muslim, but her priority is not to wear a burqa, right? So in that kind of way also, like dressing, your way of talking, your languages, your nationalities, everything differ from one Muslim to another, right? Yeah, so they are basically varied. Now we are looking at so many differences, right? Like we are telling everything is different. But once upon a time, there was a unified past for the Muslim community, right? And that dates back to almost roughly 1400 years ago. That is a long back, right? And to be very specific, it was somewhere around in the first part of the 7th century CE, right? So this 1400 years ago time we are talking about, where we had like a unified Muslim empire. And where was it located? It was in the Arabian Peninsula. Again, guys, I highly recommend you all to look at the world map every day for at least 5 minutes, right? So that you'll remember where roughly the places are, because as history students, it's kind of important for us to know where the places are. If not all, some important places. And especially now the Arabian Peninsula will become very, very important, because we are talking about Central Islamic lands which are in Arabian Peninsula. So quickly go through a map locate where Arabian Peninsula is, and that is where the Islam had its roots, right? Prophet Muhammad belonged to this Arab region, right? So then they had a unified past. What I mean by unified past here is they all belong to the same landmass, they spoke the same language, probably they might have dressed in the same manner, but as centuries passed by, this changed, right? And in this particular chapter, right, chapter number 4, we will deal with questions like rise of Islam, right? How was Islam born? Who was the founder? How did it expand over such a large territory when initially it was only focused on the Arabian Peninsula, right? So who spread it, or how did it spread? Like almost we'll be talking about 6 centuries in very, very detail, right? It is from 600 to 1200, right? 6 centuries in detail, where the core area of Islamic civilization happened. And in those 6 centuries, this Islam spread from Egypt, somewhere in the African continent, till Afghanistan, the present day Asia, right? So that was like a huge territory. It spread over such a large landmass in these 6 centuries, and after these 6 centuries, obviously it went on to spread to other parts of the wide world. So we look at these centuries in detail and as to how did it spread, right? Cool. So in these centuries, like the 6 centuries we're going to be talking about, the Islamic society as a whole never had one single pattern, right? Like probably in the 6th and 7th centuries, there was a unified way of living within the Muslim community. But again, as I was telling you, as time passed by, multiple political and cultural patterns emerged, right? There was split in the Muslim, right? These are all the topics which we will study in detail later on. But like, what are those various political and cultural patterns, right? There was a split in the religion, like Shias, Sunnis, many other schools of thought. Like some rulers started following Shia traditions, some rulers followed the other split schism, and then there are also cultural changes or cultural patterns, as in, again, like in some parts of the empire, it is very much mandatory that you'll have to wear a burqa, or in some parts that is not a mandatory case. Like different cultural patterns, there are variations in the patterns, right? Okay, so the next 3 points of the slides are very abstract, right? Just to sum it up, I just want to tell that the term Islamic, like if you think of the term Islamic, one word which comes to your mind immediately is it's a religion, right? Religion. But you won't necessarily associate culture or politics with Islam, right? But the first thing that will come to your mind is religion. But when we are studying about Islamic lands or Islamic traditions in this chapter, always remember that we will use this term as a universal category in the sense of studying political aspects, cultural aspects, social aspects, economic aspects, and religious aspects, right? So when I use the term Islamic world, I'm referring to all these aspects, right? Islamic architecture, Islamic religion, Islamic society, and all that stuff, right? So yeah, so that was basically the point I was trying to make in point number 2 and 3, right? So again, in these Muslims lands also, not everybody was a Muslim, right? We would now, even in present day India, we would call India as a Hindu dominated country, but that doesn't mean other populations are not existing. They are, right? In the same manner, in Muslim world also, not everybody is a Muslim. Some followed other religions as well, like Judaism, Christianity, etc., etc., right? But they were there, like they were existent, right? But they were not a dominant majority, right? Like they were only minor, they occupied only a minority population, right? Again, there's an analogy here, like if you look at the Christian empires, right? In the Christian empires, Christian might be the majority, but Jews might be in a very minority situation, minority position. Just like that, Muslims are a majority in the Muslim land, and there are non-Muslims existing as well. Cool. So any clarifications still here, guys? I know it's very simple. It's just an introduction, right? So it's easy till here. Okay. Give me just a second, guys. I will try to break it down for you, Yuvraj. Cool. Yeah, I'll try my best to explain it in simple words, right? Okay. Yeah, I'll just be a little bit slower and kind of repeat the point or break it down in a very simplistic manner. I'll figure it out somehow. Thanks for raising the point, Yuvraj. Thank you. Okay, so that was like a brief introduction. Now we'll spend a couple of minutes talking about the sources, right? Sources can be in the form of books, documentaries, historical works, commentaries, fictional character, archaeologies, inscriptions, coins, whatever it is. These are all the sources we have through which we will get a lot of information about the Islamic world, right? So in the same manner, whatever we are going to study in this chapter, especially from whatever happened between 600 to 1200 CE, the majority of the sources we'll be using are these four, right? The first one is Chronicles, right? In the Persian language, it is called as Tawarik, right? So these chronicles are the sources which narrate events in order of time, right? So suppose, let's say I'm a chronicler and I was living somewhere in the 7th century, 8th century. I would literally write down everything that was happening in the society, point to point. I will just describe it, like, okay, fine, today king came to the court, so and so courtier asked him a question. King gave his answer. The military is going to the war, right? Or there's a festival happening tomorrow. Like every little detail. Again, it might be anything, war related, culture related, society related, whatever it is, everything is written down just like a descriptive document. There's no analysis, there is no room for interpretation involved, right? It's just plain facts described in the chronicles, right? So we have chronicles available from the 6th century to 12th century, and from there we get the majority of the information, right? And the second work, the second source are semi-historical works, such as biographies, right? Again, biographies in the Persian language are called as sira, right? Again, biographies everybody know, right? Somebody writing about one particular personality are called as biographies. Yeah. So yeah, Trisha, you kind of got the point, like a diary writing, right? So but again, the difference between diary writing and chronicles is you write diaries for yourself. You don't want other people to read your diaries, but chronicles are written so that other people will read it, right? But again, the type of documenting is the same, right? But the audience are different. Yeah, you're somewhere close, Trisha. Cool. So where were we? We were on the third point. The next source is the record of the sayings and doings of the Prophet, right? When Prophet Muhammad was alive, almost for 2-3 decades, he preached to people. Like when he himself got the message from Allah. Again, everybody might have already heard of this story, right? Like the narrative goes as such that one day he goes to a cave, and in the cave he starts listening all these voices, but he can't see anybody speaking. He's just randomly listening to all these voices, right? All these are the messages, and then he used to come back every day and write it down, or like spread the message to somebody else, right? So like for a couple of days he went to the cave, he listened to the narrative, came back, spread the message. That was like a daily routine. That was how Quran came into being, right? I'm hoping everybody knows the story. Yeah. So so records of the sayings and doings of Prophet, or like how did Prophet live, or what were his preachings, who were his disciples, what did he talk, according to him, was this philosophy a good thing or a bad thing? Like everything revolving around the Prophet were recorded back in those times. Even after his death, his disciples wrote something down on paper, right? So these type of sources are called as hadith, right? Again, these are important sources for us now in the 21st century. And the last type of source is commentaries of the Quran, which are known as tafsir, right? Again, Quran though it's written long back, probably in 7th or 8th centuries Quran was written. But now, as a as somebody, as an audience or like a third person, I have the right to comment on the Quran, right? Or even in the 8th, 9th, 10th centuries, some Islamic scholars actually commented on the Quran. Commentaries are nothing but, like giving their opinions, right? This part of the Quran is right, or this part of the Quran is wrong, or like their personal views. Whatever, like again, we are not saying whether it's good or bad, but that's just a source available to us, right? Yeah, so these four were the major sources of information for us to know about the Islam, which was spreading in the 7th to 12th centuries, right? Cool. Again, not just these four main sources, but there are a couple of other sources as well, right? And how the information was passed on from 6th to 21st century, right? So we'll look at this point where the material from which these works were produced was a large collection of eyewitnesses, right? Again, see, for example, I want to write a biography, right? I need to look at some source because I am not living in the 7th century. I don't know what Prophet Muhammad said. There needs to be some source which I need to have in order to write a biography of Muhammad, Prophet Muhammad, right? So I will look at that intermediary source. These intermediary sources were written during the time of Prophet Muhammad, right? His disciples used to write a lot about him. Like they are basically eyewitnesses, right? Like they experienced it firsthand. So they used to write it down and they are called as akhbar, right? So looking at these akhbars, I get my information about Prophet Muhammad and I will write a different biography, right? So that was another kind of source. And lastly, the point here is the authenticity of each report, right? Again, whatever was written down, you don't know whether it was true or not, right? Especially because there are so many centuries gap in between, almost 15 centuries now, right? So we don't really know whether whatever information we have right now is correct or wrong, or partly correct, partly wrong, or some of them might be exaggerations, right? Some of them may be hyped up. So we don't know. In order to trace that, in order to assess as to whether it is right or wrong, we have a process called, so actually it's a chain of transmission, right? It's called isnad. Again, it's a very, what do you say, complicated process, guys. I'll just tell you in very, very brief manner, right? So okay, let's call these generations, okay? So let's just call Prophet Muhammad generation 1. Whatever message he passed on to his next generation, to generation 2, they might have heard it orally or they might have written it down. Then comes generation 3. Generation 3 used to get information from generation 2. Generation 4 used to get information from generation 3. Generation 5 from 4, like the descending order, you're like getting it, right? So just like that there are so many generations in these last 1400 years, right? So there needs to be a particular chain which we can trace back to 6th century, right? So only if there is a continuous chain of information without a breakage in between, then that source is called as isnad, and that is considered to be a reliable source, right? That's accurate, that's true, right? But if there's a cut in between, if there's a break in between the this chain, then it was considered to be a false report, right? Cool. I'm hoping people got this isnad point because it's really, really complicated and not explained in your textbook as well, but the term is given, so I thought I'll just make the concept clear. Okay. Cool then. I do not see any questions. Guys, if you have any questions, just please put them down in the chat box, right? As soon as I finish teaching one slide, I will answer your questions, right? Don't save it till the end. You can just keep asking in between also. Okay, so again, these are, like, although the reliability was not foolproof, as I was telling you, Isnad was a very, very reliable source, right? Because you can trace this transmission back to the original sources. So it's not foolproof, as in it is definitely true, right? So definitely true is something called as foolproof, right? So there is a lot of reliability we can place on these isnads, right? But again, medieval Muslim writers were very, very careful in selecting their information and understanding the motives of the informants. Again, a very simple point. I am there. I want to learn about what Prophet Muhammad's life was, right? And there are n number of sources available to me. I will carefully choose which one I want to study, because obviously I can't study everything. I can just look at one or two sources, right? So it's my choice to select one source. Again, there's a lot of effort I will put in to carefully select the source, right? I have to understand who is the author, what were his intentions, what was his perspective, and all that stuff. And then finally, I'll select a source, right? That is exactly what medieval Muslim writers did while they were trying to unpack Islam, right? Yeah, again, there might be some controversial issues, right? Okay, before going on, Trisha has a question about what are hadiths, right? So hadiths are basically these writings or recordings of whatever Prophet Muhammad did when he was alive. What he said, what he did, how did he act, everything was written down, right? So these recordings are called as hadith. Cool? I'm hoping that point is clear, Trisha. Okay, so I'll quickly move on to the second point about the controversial issues, right? Again, very, very simple example. Let's just say in one source they said that, again, I'm just giving you an example. I don't know whether it's true or not. Random example, right? Somebody said Prophet Muhammad used to sit on the ground and have his lunch. And the other source said Prophet Muhammad used to sit on a mat and have lunch. Or some other report might say Muhammad used to sit on a rock and have lunch. Like just three different versions of the same event. The event is he's having lunch, but where is he sitting and having lunch is the topic of differentiation here, right? So they might be different sources. What these medieval Muslim scholars used to do is they used to depict every event. They used to write down all those three possibilities in their writings, right? Because they used to leave it on to the reader to decide. The reader will eventually, suppose I am reading that book, then I have to decide and I have to believe that, okay, fine, Prophet Muhammad used to sit on a mat. Fine, I believe that he used to sit on a mat. Some other person might think, no, he used to sit on the ground. Again, it depends on what the reader wants to believe in, right? But as far as the writer is concerned, they used to make sure that all the possibilities or all the controversies of the story, all the versions of the story are written down, right? Cool. Again, their description, whenever they're describing something closer to what happened in their time, or like when they have like a first hand experience, right? Like I'm writing about something which happens in the 21st century. I'm looking at it live, right? So I will have a first hand experience. Then I can write it in a very detailed manner. I can analyze it, I can organize it in a proper structure, I can systematically write what's happening, right? But if I want to write something about 10th century or 11th century, it might not be that analytical, right? Again, the point here is the description of events closer to your own times is more systematic and analytical. Yeah. Okay, the last point of this slide is most of the chronicles and semi-historical works, as we have discussed in the first slide, where they are the major sources of information, right? The language that was used to write these texts or produce these texts are Arabic, right? Most of the chronicles and semi-historical works are in Arabic, and the most famous of them is called the Tariq of Tabari, right? You don't have to remember all these names, guys. It's called Tariq of Tabari, which was written approximately in 923 CE, right? It was written, and later this Arabic text got translated into English, and it was so huge, the text was so bulky, right? There was a lot of information that when translated into English, it was written in 38 volumes. That is a lot, guys. A volume in itself is firstly a very fat book, right? We usually have this differentiation between thin books and fat books, right? For example, your 11th standard history textbook is a fat book for y'all. So again, volumes are even fatter than your textbooks, right? So in that sense, there are 38 volumes. That is a lot of information, right? Okay, any questions still here? Okay, no questions. Therefore, I would treat it as everything is clear. Cool. We'll quickly move on. So that was about the Arabic chronicles, right? Mostly they were in Arabic, but sometimes they were in the Persian language as well, right? But they're very, very few in number. And mostly wherever you came across these Persian chronicles, they were from the lands of Central Asia and Iran. Because Iran and Central Asia was the region where you spoke a lot of Persian. As you moved away from Iran into the Arab Peninsula, sorry, you spoke Arabic, and then as you moved further north, you spoke Turkish, right? So Persian texts were available from Iran and Central Asia, and there are also a lot of Christian chronicles. Again, surprising point, because we usually won't think of Christians writing about Islam religion, but yes, they did sometimes write about Islam, right? These are Christian chronicles, and they were written in a language called as Syriac. The spelling is here, it's Syriac, right? It's a dialect of Aramaic, guys. So Aramaic is like the official language of Christians when it was initially founded, because the first copy of Bible was written in Aramaic, right? Yeah, so Aramaic was very special to Christians. So whenever Christians were writing all these chronicles about Islam, they used to write it in Syriac, which is a dialect of Aramaic. Also, again, they are very, very few in number when compared to the Arabic texts, right? But nonetheless, even though they are very small, few in number, they give us a lot of valuable information, especially about the history of early Islam, like the 7th, 8th centuries Islam. We get a lot of information through the Christian chronicles, right? Okay, Trisha has a question about the remembering of languages. Again, Trisha, see, just remember that the major languages used in the Islamic era were Arabic, Persian, and to some extent Turkish, right? Just remember these three languages. Others are not necessary again, right? But those three languages, just remember the names at least, right? Okay, so cool. So that was clear. And besides chronicles, right, like besides these factual descriptive documents, we also have other sources of information like legal texts, right, geographies, travelogues, literary works such as stories and poems. Again, these are all different kinds of writings, different kinds of works written by different authors. So these also give us valuable information about the Islamic world. Yeah. And nextly, there are documentary evidences. There is another source, another type of source. Documentary evidences are basically these fragmentary pieces of writing, right? I'll tell you where these documentary evidences are used. The number one situation which you can imagine is, let's say I'm a king and I want to pass on some information or some secret information via my messenger or via my soldier to the ruler of another kingdom, to another king basically, right? Then I will write it down in the form of documentaries and then I'll pass on this private information, right? Or I want to issue some official orders to the larger audience, like from on so and so date we'll be celebrating so and so festival, it's going to be a public event. I will write it down in the form of a documentary and I will ask my soldiers to spread the message in the kingdom, right? So these are some situations where documentaries were used, right? And they are very, very valuable and also reliable sources of information because like when you're passing on such kind of information, obviously it's going to be true, right? There's no sneaky behavior involved. That kind of information is obviously going to be true because they are secrets, right? So that is why they are valuable sources again. And more majorly these documentaries come from Greek and Arabic writings, right? And there is something also called as Geniza records, right? So Geniza records are again, there's a whole history attached to Geniza and all that stuff, but roughly just remember that whatever texts were produced in the Hebrew language, right? Hebrew language, whatever texts were produced in this particular language, as the centuries passed by, people made it a point to store, collect and preserve all of these Hebrew texts, right? They are officially called as Geniza records, right? Cool. I'm hoping that point is clear as well. Okay, we'll quickly move on to the next slide. Cool. The last sources of information we'll be looking at are the archaeological evidences, right? Very, very important. You might have studied in your previous classes as well, like till 9th, 10th standard, that archaeological evidences are very, very crucial. They give us a lot of valuable information, right? And that is exactly the case even to know about the Islamic world. Various excavations have been happening, especially in the Arabian deserts, Gulf regions and all that stuff. Obviously, there is some kind of evidence that the archaeologists have found. Then there are numismatics. Numismatics are the study of coins, right? The currency or the coins which were in circulation back in those times, issued by the kings, right? Even if you study the coins, you will get some kind of information, right? For example, if I look at a particular coin and there is the face of the ruler and also the name of the ruler on the coin, then obviously I'll know that, okay, fine, in so and so century, this king ruled over that particular kingdom. At least that information you're getting through the coins, right? Yeah. So that is numismatics. And nextly, there are epigraphic sources. Again, epigraphs are the study of inscriptions, right? Various inscriptions were erected in different parts of the world. And if you study these inscriptions, you will get a lot of information, right? So not just like political histories, right? Like who ruled it, when did they rule it, not just that kind of history, but also economic history, art history. So much information was gathered from the numismatics and epigraphic sources. Yeah, how the trade was happening, what sculptures were being sculpted, like which kind of design was being used, were wall paintings there, was international trade happening, like was some other materials being exchanged or no, like various kinds of information basically. Okay, and Lastly, coming to the now we are quickly jumping into the 19th century, right? This is exactly the time, like the initial phases where proper histories of Islam started to be written, right? People started writing like proper histories of Islam in the form of academic work, right? When I mean proper histories, I'm referring to academic work. So these histories of Islam began to be written in the 19th century, and not everywhere, but specifically in two regions, namely Germany and Netherlands, right? So especially these were written by university professors. Yeah? Cool. So the next is colonial interests in Middle East and North Africa encouraged French and British researchers. So almost by the end of 19th century, 18th, early 20th century, all this colonization was happening, right? So British people, French people, they started going and colonizing different parts of Africa and Middle East. So when people were actually residing there, since that is the land where the Islam started, obviously Middle East and North Africa, Islam spread in the initial stages, right? So British researchers and French researchers, they gained a lot of interest to study Islam. So that happened as well in the 19th century. And lastly, as I was telling you, there are some Christian missionaries slash Christian priests as well who paid a close attention to the history of Islam. They started researching, they started writing so many books, so many articles, so many good works, right? Uh, they might not like exclusively write about Islam in particular, but at least they're writing about Islam in comparison to Christianity, right? Let's say, I don't know, in Christianity we have Abraham as one important character. In Islamic world as well, there is an equivalent character but with a different name, right? So when Christian people were writing, they'll be like, okay, fine, Abraham did this or Abraham did that, and then at the same time they will compare it to the Islamic figure, whatever his name is, and they'll write ki, okay, fine, this person did that, this person did this. So they're writing all this information in comparison, right? No, but not in isolation. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this slide. Any questions still here, guys? Okay, Anisha joined us. Hello, Anisha. Okay, but other than that, any questions? Please put them down in the chat box. I will answer them. Okay, so it's clear. Hopefully it's clear to everybody else as well, right? Thanks, Trisha, for messaging. Cool. Okay, so we ended here, right? Okay, so basically now we'll talk about a new term called Orientalists. Again, there's a lot of debate happening about the Orientalists. Who are they? What are they focusing on? Where did they come from? And all that stuff. We don't need all that right now. Just remember that Orientalists are scholars who are interested to study about the Asia region, right? The Asian region as a whole. Whoever shows interest in studying, not everybody, scholars, I'm talking about scholars. Scholars, whoever are interested in studying Asian land, its culture, its history, its politics, its society, everything, they are called as Orientalists, right? So Orientalist scholars, they started coming up in the 19th, 20th centuries. Sorry. And obviously they are reading all these Arabic and Persian texts, and they're critically analyzing all these texts, right? They're interpreting it, they're analyzing it, they are thinking of a context in which these texts might have been written, and they are writing commentaries on those particular texts, right? So yeah, so that was happening. These people were called as Orientalists, and out of those Orientalists, one particular scholar who was very, very important, who contributed a lot to the Islamic law and theology in particular. There's a particular Islamic law we have, which is called as Sharia, right? Sharia law. People might have heard of the name again. It's Sharia law. And then there's theology, right? So especially in these two particular fields, law and theology, this particular individual called Ignaz Goldheiser, again the pronunciation might differ, let's just call him Ignaz Goldheiser for now, right? His nationality was that he hailed from Hungary, right? Somewhere in the central part of Europe. He was from Hungary, but his religion was a Jew. Yeah. So he attended this Islamic college in Cairo. Cairo is in present day Africa, I'm supposing. Yeah. So he attended this particular college called Al Azhar in Cairo, and he after coming out of college, after graduating from that college, he produced some path-breaking studies, as in like valuable studies. But he wrote all of these texts in German, right? His mother tongue, German. Yeah, so this is one particular scholar which we need to remember, right? Remember his name, guys. Okay. And yeah, so that was happening, and most of the 20th century historians of Islam majorly followed the interests and methods of Orientalists. By the way, Ignaz Goldheiser is an Orientalist, right? He's one of the important Orientalists. So this was happening in 19th century, right? So even in the 20th century, whoever scholars were coming up, right, they exactly followed the same methods that the Orientalists used to study Islamic world, right? The broad framework remains the same, but in addition to that, they have widened the scope of Islamic history, right? Because to be very honest, whatever these Orientalists were studying was very, very limited. They're only studying Islamic law, or they're studying Islamic theology or Islamic political history and all that stuff. But they never really talked about Islamic economy or Islamic anthropology and stuff like that. So in the 20th century, all these scholars who were coming up, they started talking about Islamic world in a different aspect, in a different lens, which is economics, anthropology, and statistic, right? Okay, Kushi has a request, but I'm sorry, Kushi, I'm not well versed with Hindi, therefore I can't teach in Hindi. All of my presentations or sessions are going to be in English itself. Okay, okay, we'll move on. Yeah, so again, basically the point we're referring to right here is the historiography of Islam. The word historiography is nothing but writing histories, guys. Studying the past and writing histories. That is called as historiography in very, very simple terms, right? So whatever all these scholars are doing in terms of writing Islamic history is a very, very good example to show that, or to tell us that, even though all these scholars are not Muslims, right? Whoever are writing about Islamic world doesn't necessarily have to be a Muslim, right? His traditions might be different, his beliefs might be different, he might be a Christian, Jew, Hindu, whatever. But even though he follows a different custom, still he can study Muslims in a different respect, right? So usually people have this misconception that only Muslim people can become scholars of Islamic history. No, that's not the case. Anybody can do it. You're a Sikh, you're a Christian, you're a Jew, whatever you are, you have that ability to go learn Arabic languages, learn Turkish language, or learn Persian language, and study all those original sources, and then write a book of your own, producing on the Islamic history, right? So that's like a misconception which will be falsified by looking at the historiography of Islam. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so this is another sub-theme in your chapter which is called as the rise of Islam in Arabia, faith, community and politics. So as we have already discussed, Islam as a religion was first, or like was born, let's say Islam was born in Arabia, right? Especially in the Arab Peninsula. And in this sub-theme, we'll be talking about the faith, community and politics, right? As in what is the exact faith, or like in what ways did people worship Allah, or did they live as a community? Was there any sense of community belonging, or were they respective individuals, or like were there any Muslim rulers? If there were, how did they treat the non-Muslim subjects and stuff like that? We'll be dealing with all these topics in this particular sub-theme, right? We won't complete the sub-theme today, but I'll just pave a segment into it, and then we'll talk about it in much detail in Saturday, right? Saturday's class. Okay, so again, brief introduction as to who Muhammad was, right? He lived in the first part of the 7th century, as I was telling you earlier, and in the year 612, he finally got the messages of Allah, Quran messages, whatever. Like he basically heard all these voices, right? So by 612, he got all the information. So from 612 AD, 612 CE, till his death in 632 CE, which is almost for like what, 20 years? Yeah. So he was preaching the worship of a single God called as Allah, right? So he was preaching his messages, like according to the Islamic way of life, Allah tells us to live like this, don't do this, this is bad, this is not ethical, stuff like that. So he basically went around and preached in the Arab Peninsula. Yeah. And also he preached about the membership of a single community of believers. He was like, as all of us are following the same tradition, we are supposed to live as a community, right? We should have relations with each other. We should be very friendly. We should be living as a community, right? So he preached all this good stuff. That community living, or like a membership of a single community, in the Persian terms was called as Ummah, right? Again, don't have to remember it. Yeah. So that was how the origin of Islam happened, right? Like that was how Islam came into being. And a little bit about Muhammad. He was an Arab by language, right? The major language he spoke was Arabic basically, and also by culture, like he followed all the Arab traditions, Arab beliefs and all that stuff. And by profession, he was a merchant, right? Till 612, he was actually a merchant, just like everybody else. He has an occupation for himself. That is how he would earn his livelihood, right? But from 612 AD, he started following, like he gave up his profession as a merchant and started preaching Islam, right? Okay. Okay, Kanika. Okay, Kanika has a suggestion. What is that, Kanika? You can put it down in the chat box. Aditya, as far as the sessions are concerned, this is relatively a larger chapter, so probably it will take like 6 to 7 sessions. This is just like the first session we are having today. So yeah. Okay, can we have like one short revision sessions of every chapter? Yeah, we can do that, but the thing is we've only covered one chapter till now. But like if you all want like one session totally dedicated to, like a one short revision types, we can do that on chapter 2 and 3. Yeah. So by the end of this class, have a consensus among y'all and tell me like when will we have that particular class, right? We can have it then. Also, that's a good point, Kanika. Thanks for the suggestion anyways. Yeah, Trisha, for sure. We'll complete this chapter and only then we'll have these one-shot revisions, right? We'll definitely complete this. Okay, 4th October, Aditya has an exam. So Aditya, like, you want me to complete the lesson before 4th October or like what's the scene? Is that what you're trying to convey? Yes. Kanika, I totally get where you're coming from. I understand your point. We'll do it. But once this chapter finishes, then we'll do it, right? Okay, cool. So I'll try to quickly wind this chapter up, but the fact that it's a relatively larger chapter and also it's Islamic world, right? Many of us are not popular with it, so we need to kind of make the concepts clear before. So, but I'll try to wind it up in like 4 or 5 sessions. Yeah. Anyways, so we'll get back because we still have another slide to complete. Okay, so where was I? He was a merchant by profession, right? So till 612, he was a merchant, and then once he started preaching the worship of a single god, he gave up his profession, right? And then 6th century Arab culture, whatever was happening in the land of Arabia, whatever culture was being followed by the people there, it was very largely confined to the Arabian Peninsula, right? And also the areas of southern Syria and Mesopotamia. Again, guys, I highly recommend you all to look at the world map every day at least for 5 minutes, right? So that you'll have a gist of where is what, like which area is where, right? So have a look at that and try to locate Syria, Mesopotamia, especially because we have a total chapter dedicated to it, and also the Arabian Peninsula. Yeah. So as far as the organization of Arabs is concerned, they were usually divided into tribes, right? In the Arabic language, these tribes were called as Qabila. Yeah. So, and each tribe had a leader, like a chieftain, and usually these tribes are formed by people belonging to the same family, or they are formed based on the blood relations, right? Those were usually smaller tribes, but if you want to increase the size of a tribe, you know, like through some family ties or like community ties, some other community can come and join your tribe, right? So that is how the size of the tribe expanded. And in some rare scenarios, people from outside the Arab land, through some kind of influence slash recommendations, whatever, they used to come and join these tribes, but they were not looked up as like proper Muslims, right? There was a proper kind of differentiation or distinction to all these people belonging to outside of Arab land. They used to have different places of worship, like there was a different mosque for them, right? So even though they were a part of the tribe, they were never looked at equally. Yeah. So the basic point here is tribes led by a chieftain, and they basically had the leader, whoever was being chosen as the head of the tribe, usually is supposed to be like a very wise person and also a person full of courage and generosity. Yeah. So these are the characteristics needed for in order for some person to be a head of a tribe. Okay. Okay, Kanika has an exam tomorrow. I don't know, for some reason everybody is complaining about this chapter, guys. It's not that difficult. I mean, like, see, it's huge. I get that part about this chapter being relatively larger than the other chapters, but again, the concepts are easier when you actually pay attention to it. So like have multiple revisions, just go through every line in your textbook. I don't really think it's too difficult. Yeah. But anyways, all the best. Do your exams well, guys. Yeah, we are here, right? Cool. So again, when I'm referring to the Arab land, that doesn't mean everybody in the Arab region worship the same god. No, definitely not the case. I was talking about all these tribes, right? So every tribe had their own god or goddess. Yeah. uh, and that was a idol form of worship. If you look at the present day Islamic religion, idolatry is strictly prohibited. Idolatry is basically having like a statue or like a idol, like a physical presence of the god, like giving a form to it, right? So that was there before Islam was introduced, like all these physical features of god, like statues of god or whatever. But once Islam came into being, there was no idolatry anymore. Yeah. So that idol was called as sanam in the Arabic language, and there was a shrine in which this idol is placed, and that shrine was called as masjid. Yeah. There was a god, goddess, people used to worship different gods and goddesses, and mostly all these Arab tribes were nomadic. They used to go from one place to another, especially in search of food. Yeah. Whoever were residing in the drier regions, obviously it's a desert, no water, no agricultural production. That is why they used to come to these green areas of the desert. Green areas of the desert basically mean the existence of an oasis, right? Oasis, again, you've learnt in your smaller before classes. It's a body of water around which there was some sort of agricultural practice because availability of water was there. Yeah. So people used to, all these nomadic Arab tribes used to shift from drier to greener areas of the desert in search of food, but especially dates. Dates were very easily available in the Arab Peninsula. Yeah. And also their asset mostly was having camels, and obviously camels needed fodder as their food. So in order to obtain fodder as well, they used to come to these greener areas. Yeah. Okay, Trisha has a really nice suggestion. That's actually a good idea, Trisha. I will do that by the end of this chapter. Thank you so much. So I will do that, and probably I will share it in the Telegram scholars, like Telegram channel. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Thanks, Trisha. Cool. So I'm lost. Yeah, so I was here, right? So not everybody is a nomadic person. Some of the tribes actually settled down because they had scope for agriculture. Once when you are into cultivation or agriculture, you have to settle down. You can't roam from one place to another, because once you sow the seeds, you have to wait till it's harvested, right? That's a long process, 3 6 months, sometimes 9 months. So definitely you have to settle in a particular place, and that is how settlement started to come up. And the second point is also in terms of trade, right? Whenever you're practicing trade as your primary occupation, it's a necessity for you to settle down instead of being nomads. Yeah. And coming to Muhammad's own tribe, obviously Muhammad was also an individual in the Arab Peninsula. He had a tribe to which he belonged to, and that tribe was named called as Quraysh, right? The spelling is here. It's called as Quraysh, and they lived in a place called Mecca. Yeah, the whole of the Quraysh tribe lived in a place called Mecca and controlled the main shrine there, right? As I was telling you, every tribe had a shrine, every tribe had a god. Yeah. So for the Qurayshi tribe, the main shrine was called as Kaaba. Yeah, the spelling is here. It's called Kaba. Yeah, Kaaba. It was a cube-like structure, and inside the shrine, the idols were placed. right? So people used to go to the shrine every day, they used to worship and come back. Yeah, so the Quraysh in general like was a very powerful tribe. Like out of all the tribes living there, Quraysh was generally a very powerful tribe. Yeah, and also the kind of shrine, the Kaaba was very holy, not just for Quraysh tribe but also for tribes living outside Mecca. Right, people from different regions of the Arab Peninsula used to come to Mecca in order to worship Kaaba. Right, so not just that, they just thought that the place in itself was holy or sacred, and they used to install their own idols at the Kaaba. Yeah, so not just the Kaaba idol but also other idols were there surrounding the Kaaba shrine. And obviously because of that, annual pilgrimages were there. Like pilgrimages as in people from different parts of the Arab Peninsula coming to the land of Mecca as a religious trip or like as a religious tour. Right? So that's called as pilgrimage. And annually these pilgrimages used to happen. Like even now we have people from all over the world worshipping Mecca and Medina, and that's called as Hajj, right? Like if you all have any Muslim friends or Muslim families, you will know this. They go to these pilgrimages called as Hajj every year in order to worship like to Mecca and Medina. Yeah. So back in those days also this Hajj was practiced, and people used to come to the Mecca shrine called as Kaaba to worship. Yeah. Cool. This is like the last slide, so we'll just quickly wind it up in 2 minutes. Yeah. Again, another reason as to why Mecca is so important, besides the fact that besides the fact that Kaaba was there, why else was it important, right? The reason is it was located on the crossroads of a trade route between Yemen and Syria, right? Yemen and Syria are these two regions again surrounding the Arab Peninsula, and especially in terms of trade, in order to go from Yemen to Syria or Syria to Yemen, like either way, you have to go via Mecca, right? You have to cross Mecca. So Mecca was like this very important center in terms of trade route as well. So obviously people will travel from here and there, and that is why people used to visit Mecca a lot. Like even unintentionally people used to do that. So that is another reason as to why Mecca was very important. Yeah. So again, some rules which were followed near the Mecca shrine was that violence was forbidden, like no sort of violence was allowed. People have to follow ahimsa. People should not be violent, should not harm one another. Yeah. And also in return, the Mecca shrine used to give protection to all the visitors, right? Protection was provided to all the visitors. And secondly, pilgrimage and commerce gave the nomadic and settled tribes opportunities to communicate. As in, see, what I basically mean by pilgrimage and commerce here is, because of these two activities, people have been traveling from one region to another, right? So when they are traveling from one region to another, there is communication and transmission of ideas slash beliefs slash customs, right? So all these ideas and information is also traveling along with the people, right? So let's say people coming from Syria and I am in Mecca. When a Syrian trade person comes and talks to me about how he lives, I'll obviously get to know something about his lifestyle, right? That's a source of information. Yeah. So that is how they are sharing all their beliefs and customs. And that is happening, or that is possible, because of the pilgrimage and trade that was happening. And lastly, last point to look at for today's class is this, right? Again guys, I'm talking like whatever we have talked till right now is before Prophet Muhammad. Yeah, like all this trade, Mecca, shrines, Yemen, Syria, whatever we have talked till now is before the Islam religion came up, right? So before Islam religion came up, the people of Arabian Peninsula, followed something called polytheistic religion. Yeah, polytheistic religion is the opposite of monotheism. So again, to differentiate them, mono is one, right? So they just have like one god to worship in monotheistic religions. But in the polytheistic religions, you have so many gods, like more than two gods to worship, right? So again, just to give you examples, Hinduism, there are 3.3 crore gods. So obviously that's a polytheistic religion, right? But again, if you come to Islam, there's only one God called as Allah. Then that is a monotheistic religion, right? I'm hoping people got this clarification between monotheistic and polytheistic. Yeah. So all of these were polytheistic Arabs because not just one idol, but they are worshipping different idols, right? That is why they did not know of the notion of a supreme God. Obviously, they did not know about Allah. What does Allah say? Allah says that I am the ultimate one. Believe in me, worship me, there's no other God. But all this philosophy and concepts Arab people were never aware of before Prophet Muhammad preached them. Yeah? So that was what was happening. So basically they followed a polytheistic religion. Cool. So that brings us to the end of today's class. Again, guys, all your points are very much acknowledged. I kind of realize now that so many people are complaining about this chapter, which basically means this chapter is tougher to a certain extent. But again, go through the chapter, at least read 3-4 pages of it every day, like every line I'm basically telling. Yeah. Otherwise, just to make it psychologically easier for you, just treat it as two different chapters, right? Then at least you won't have this idea that, oh my god, this chapter is so big, I can't read it, it's very difficult to revise and all that stuff. At least to avoid that thing from your head, treat it as two different chapters. Yeah. But again, I have considered all your points. Thank you so much for putting your views forward so that I can come up with something else in order to make the chapter easier for you. Yeah. So, and Trisha's point is highly acknowledged. I will definitely try to make some kind of notes by telling like few important points. Yeah, and I'll try to share that on the Telegram channel group. Not now, but like just give me a couple of days time. I'll surely do that. Yeah. Okay, cool. So any questions still here? Any clarifications needed? Anything, just ask them in the chat box. Cool. Just keep typing down your questions, guys. In the meanwhile, I'll try to wind up the session because we're already 20 minutes past time. Okay, so about the pitch made earlier about Unacademy, Iconic and Plus subscriptions, by using my code, which is TUM10, you can get a 10% off straight away. But there is a special offer going on right now. It started on 18th September and it ends by the end of this week. Yeah, so that's a special offer where you can get an extra 5% off on a 9-month subscription and an extra 10% off on any subscription which is 12 plus months. It's a limited offer. Go grab yours, guys, before the offer ends. Yeah. And yeah, so if you like the content of these videos, please do like it, share it as much as possible, and subscribe to the channel Unacademy, also Scholars in particular. Yeah, thank you so much again for coming every day at 6 p.m. and listening to the classes. Thank you so much, guys. I highly appreciate your effort. Okay, before leaving, thanks, Mahvish. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, but thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you. Okay, so Trisha has a question. No, Trisha. So till Muhammad, or like till people actually started following Quran and Islam, they followed polytheism. But once Prophet Muhammad came in, the sole point he was teaching is, guys, like, so basically he was saying that it is wrong to worship so many gods. There are no so many gods. We only have one God, which is Allah. Like, he was basically focusing on the monotheistic way of worshipping God. Yeah? Good question, Trisha. Cool. So, any more questions? Okay, so that basically means everything is clear. Again, don't hesitate to ask questions. If not now, if something comes up later or pops up something later in your brain, don't hesitate to ask the questions in the comment box below. Yeah, I'll try to answer them in a couple of hours after you ask. Yeah, so okay, so I'll always be here for any clarifications you all need, for any suggestions / tips, whatever. So you can ask me about anything, guys. Okay. Good that at least you can find it interesting because of the way I'm teaching. That actually means a lot, Trisha. Thank you so much. I'll try to make it interesting further as well. Yeah. See, the problem with this chapter, again, it's a very concept oriented and also very abstract. Yeah. So I'll try to kind of put in some present day examples or like something. I'll try to do something and make it interesting. Don't worry about that. Cool then. So we're already past time by a lot of minutes. It's time to end the class. I'll see you guys again on Saturday. Is it Saturday? Yeah, it's Saturday. I'll see you guys again on Saturday at 6 p.m. in the evening. Yeah, same timing, same channel, and where we'll discuss this chapter in very much detail. Yeah, I'm hoping everybody tunes in again on Saturday at 6 p.m. See you guys then. Till then, have a good evening and also have a good day tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Cool. I'll just hang around for a couple of seconds in case anybody has any questions. But if not, you'll are free to leave, guys. You'll are free to leave the session. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye. Okay, so that is it then. Cool. Have a good evening and be safe, guys. I'll see you on Saturday. Bye.